You bring up you bring up an interesting, quite like 2 points. Maybe I'll start with this one. What's like how does like the role and responsibility of tech like going forward? Do you foresee, like you said, like maybe doing the good is the way to go? And will the next generation of startup companies, individuals that are in high school now that are witnessing everything that's happening, will this spark a change in responsibility of tech going forward? And will it be about the greater good versus the dollar? Like, is that possible from everything that has happened here in 2020? And for the young people that are, the young scientists, the young mathematicians, the young entrepreneurs, potential business people of the future, like our children, will this impact their future? And will they start seeing things differently? And will tech look different in 20 years? Like, what are your thoughts about, the responsibility of tech?
Well, I think I want to be optimistic, and to some extent I am optimistic because access to information has become a lot more democratized, right? So you can't ascend, you don't necessarily need to ascend the corporate ladder or ascend the ladder of any type of educational institution, because if you end up having a degree, you're just order of magnitudes less likely to suffer from depression. You're less likely to commit suicide. You are more likely to have, the ability to support yourself in a meaningful way if you end up having some type of education. I didn't say necessarily degree, I meant education. And when we talk about poverty and discrimination, why people can't seem to, why minorities or immigrants can't get to the top of these, kind of corporate ladders, is in large part because they may not have necessarily access to education. Try taking a single Black mother who is trying to, work for her kids, and what kind of shake is she going to have to be able to, be able to get it? We can't give her a fair shake to get a degree. And so what does that say for her ability to kind of get on, right? So access to education in the US, I mean, it's a, what is a $1.5 trillion problem over there, educational debt, and that stuff isn't forgiven. But now, we've got this information era, and again, with COVID, you could tie this back to that conversation. It's changed the argument even about universities. People are really starting to question, do I even need that thing? LSU's got a pool, shaped like that. And I think, people have seen probably the Hassan Minhaj documentary about that, where he talked about this. I mean, they spend, you've got these huge endowment funds, and but they don't spend it towards where it actually needs to be spent. And people don't end up having the easy access to education, and we have this polarization in society. And that in itself is a huge cause for discrimination, why we aren't able to have good enough representation from all aspects of society, whether it's ethnicities, genders, beliefs, etc. within there. I really am a strong proponent of open and freely accessible education. I think that's why Canada does a lot better, because you don't have to bankrupt yourself or mortgage your house in order to give your kid a good education. But I also question now these days the value of, kind of university. So, to answer your question, I think access to education is really important for kids. And I'm optimistic as we proceed into the future, it'll just become even more and more accessible. Khan Academy, I think that was a fantastic thing to go out there. People like Andrew Ng, they've managed to openly, publish a whole bunch of lessons, amazing lessons out there, out on the internet, to teach people about AI, deep learning. What you can basically get instruction in almost any subject you want. The only thing is you've got to build yourself a curriculum for it and kind of a path on the internet. You don't need to go to a university anymore. You just have to be able to demonstrate that you can do stuff. So yes, I'm optimistic that our kids are going to be able to contribute in meaningful ways out there. I've personally worked with someone who I later realized, I used one of these contractor sites on the internet, was a teenager sitting in kind of an internet cafe in Lagos in Nigeria. And this kid had an amazing command of AI technologies. And I'm going, how the hell did you manage to learn all this in an internet cafe? I mean, that blows my mind. No degree, no PhD. And I think that that's the type of thing that you want. And, this kid was able to earn some, he's able to earn some money for himself as a consequence. And he did some fantastic work. So the boys and girls out there who are going to be able to do this in the future, I think especially for girls, having that access to education is so vital. Having access to open information is so vital, but we have to make sure we don't color it completely with corporate interests, right? And dangle that kind of advertising necessarily carrot out there. But I'm optimistic for our children's future that they will be able to do this stuff, because now there's less and less barriers along the way. I don't necessarily need to think about taking out 3D mortgages just to be able to send my kids to university with the hope that the name of that university is going to somehow end up getting them in there. And I think employers are also starting to recognize, you can end up having a great bunch of degrees. And I'll tell you this, even in grad school, man, when I went there at Cornell, there were people, or U of T, who just outright did not deserve to be there. Like I worked my ass off, but there are people who just did not deserve to be there. They got in because mommy and daddy donated a lot of money to the university, but you couldn't end up getting the job then. But now here comes this, open kind of education system, and you get tested and you get compensated based on what you deliver, right? So it's, and I think that's a great thing. So I'm certainly optimistic about the future that, the conditions we have right now, which have been these kind of ivory towers, will get broken down.